London, the year 1348. It's a city of over 80,000 souls, loud, filthy, and alive. The streets smelled of animals, rotting fish, and open sewers. This was normal. But that summer, something else was in the air, something no one had a name for yet. The plague had already consumed half of Europe before it reached England's shores. It arrived by ship carried in the fleas on rats hiding below deck. Within weeks, the first Londoners began to fall sick and no one understood why. A typical morning in 1348 London began before sunrise, with church bells calling the faithful to prayer. Priests led mass in Latin words the common people could not understand, but found comfort in. By this point, some priests were already refusing to enter homes where the sick lay dying. After prayer, the city came alive, merchants hauling goods, children running, bakers opening their shutters. The market on Cheapside was the beating heart of London, packed, chaotic, and vital. Bread was sold by weight, and bakers who cheated could be dragged through the streets as punishment. Butchers worked in the open, blood running into the street gutters. Sanitation was non-existent. Children born in 1348 London had a life expectancy of barely 30 years, even before the plague. Then, one morning, a body was found in the street, swollen, blackened, already cold. The swellings came first: grotesque lumps in the neck, armpit, and groin, hard as stone. These were called buboes, and seeing one on your body was essentially a death sentence. Within days, dark blotches spread across the skin, hence the name, the Black Death. Fever, vomiting, and unbearable pain followed. Most victims died within 3 to 5 days. London's physicians had no idea what they were dealing with. Many blamed bad air or miasma. Some doctors recommended bleeding the patient, cutting veins to release the poison within. Others prescribed holding live chickens against the buboes to draw out the sickness. None of it worked. The plague did not care about rank, wealth, or piety. Kings and beggars died side by side. The plague was the great equalizer of its age. The city's graveyards filled so fast that new mass burial pits had to be dug outside the city walls. One chronicler wrote that the living were barely enough to bury the dead. Entire families were wiped out, households that had existed for generations, gone in a week. Neighbors stopped checking on each other. Fear of contagion overrode centuries of community. Some people fled the city, pouring onto roads heading north, west, anywhere away from London. But the plague traveled with them, carried in their clothing, their carts, their very breath. Back in London, the city's governance began to collapse under the weight of the dead. Trade ground to a halt, ships refused to dock, merchants refused to travel, markets thinned out. Food prices surged. Bread that cost a penny now cost 5, if you could find any at all. The poor suffered most, living in cramped, damp conditions that made them perfect hosts for disease. Yet even the wealthy were not spared. Money could not buy a cure that did not exist. In the midst of all this death, one bizarre thing happened. Crime nearly vanished. With so few people left to enforce the law, and so few left to break it, the city fell into stillness. The church struggled to explain God's silence. How could a just God allow this? Some blamed the Jews, and across Europe, horrific pogroms erupted in response to the plague. Others blamed themselves. Groups of flagellants beat their own bodies through the streets in penance. In London, the flagellants were eventually banned. The church feared they were spreading more panic. Meanwhile, ordinary Londoners tried to keep living, to work, to eat, to find moments of normalcy. Alehouses stayed open, perhaps because the living needed something to dull the horror. Children played in streets beside bodies that had not yet been collected. Death carts made their rounds each morning, the ringing of a bell announcing their approach. Bring out your dead, a phrase that would echo through history, born in moments exactly like this. Animals fared no better. Livestock died. Horses collapsed in the streets. Pets abandoned en masse. Rats, however, thrived, and with them, the very fleas carrying the plague multiplied. No one in 1348 knew that rats were the vector that knowledge would not come for 500 years. By autumn of 1348, London had lost nearly half its population, tens of thousands dead. The silence was the thing survivors remembered most, a city that had once roared, hushed. Some survivors became wealthy overnight, inheriting the property of entire dead family lines. Others lost everything, including the will to rebuild what the plague had taken. And yet London did not die. Slowly, painfully, life began to reassert itself. The survivors emerged, changed, more cynical, more individualistic, less deferential to authority. Labor became scarce, and for the first time, common workers could demand higher wages. The feudal system, which had bound peasants to lords for centuries, began to crack. The Black Death did not just kill people, it killed an entire way of organizing the world. In its aftermath, art changed. The Dance of Death motif appeared across European churches. Literature changed too. Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, born partly from this era, gave voice to common people. Medicine changed the plague, forced European thinkers to begin questioning ancient assumptions. The Black Death would return in waves for the next 300 years. But that single year, 1348, was the worst. The year London nearly ceased to exist. If you had walked these streets on an ordinary morning in August 1348, what would you have seen? You would have seen fear in every face, every shuttered window, every prayer muttered under breath. But you also would have seen courage neighbors who stayed when they could have fled. You would have seen love parents refusing to abandon sick children, spouses refusing to leave. You would have seen faith not just in God, but in the stubborn human need to survive. London endured. It always has. But it was never quite the same. The Black Death killed between 75 and 200 million people across Eurasia, a number beyond comprehension. In England alone, it is estimated that 1 in 3 people died, gone in under 2 years. We remember the Black Death as history, but to those who lived it, it was simply Tuesday. Every day in 1348 London was an act of will, to get up, to work, to love, to keep going. The city that survived became the foundation of everything that came after the Renaissance, the Reformation, modernity itself. We are, in ways we rarely consider, the descendants of the people who survived the Black Death. Their grief, their resilience, their reinvention, all of it flowed forward into the centuries that followed. So the next time you walk through London, through its old streets and ancient stones, remember that beneath your feet lies a city that once faced the end and refused it. A Day in London, 1348, ordinary in every way and utterly unlike anything we will ever know. If they endured, so can we.